When you're replacing some hub units, you may feel like you're a dentist. There's endless amounts of disassembly, and then also getting this unit out of the knuckle can be very, very difficult. So here are 5 tips you can use on your next wheel bearing job. Tip number 1, use some heat, but not too much heat. There's a philosophy out there when it comes to acetylene torches that if it's liquid, it's going to move. But with wheel bearings, what you're looking to do is to break up the galvanic corrosion between the two components. In other words, you have an aluminum knuckle and a steel wheel bearing hub unit. Between those two, over time, that galvanic corrosion can basically weld that into the knuckle. If you're using heat, also use a penetrant or another lubricant to get in. And that's what the heat helps to do. It helps to break up that corrosion between the two components. Tip number 2, look at the service information and see if it can only be done on a press. There are some tools out there where you can replace a wheel bearing on the vehicle, and that might be easier. But on some vehicles, if it's pressed into the knuckle, well, you're going to have to take it off and use a press. This might seem actually simpler than leaving it on the vehicle, so make sure you're checking the service information that you're using the correct process to remove that wheel bearing. Tip number 3, check your depth. Our third tip involves these cartridge wheel bearings or press fit wheel bearings. The critical thing when you're installing these is to make sure that the air gap between the wheel speed sensor and the reluctor that's placed inside the seal have the correct distance between the two. This can be done with feeler gauges or other tools inside your shop that can measure this very, very small distance. This comes into play when you're pressing this bearing into a knuckle to make sure you have the depth set correctly. Tip number 4, turn, don't pry. This tip involves this, an air hammer. Typically, a technician will want to pry between the knuckle and the hub unit itself to get it out. But the secret here is to break up the galvanic corrosion. To do this, you want to turn the hub unit inside the knuckle. This breaks up the corrosion and it will come out very freely. Tip number 5, look at your parts options. On some vehicles, well, there might be a loaded knuckle. If you have a loaded knuckle, this makes it easier to replace. In other words, you're cutting out that entire process of having to remove the hub unit or press out a cartridge wheel bearing. Look at your part screen. If it's there, this can save you time, and it can also save your customer potentially money. So I would say work smarter, not harder, with these 5 tips, and if you use them during your next wheel bearing replacement, they can help save you time and frustration and make sure that that vehicle leaves your bay with the wheel bearing not making noise. I'm Andrew Markell. Thank you very much.